Guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, and today I got Jose with me from Kirk's Playing Games. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me here.
I guess you're over in Texas, so it's still morning time there.
It's 11 a.m. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, awesome. So I encountered you on Twitter. There was a conversation going on, and I saw it, and you had mentioned you'd been doing YouTube videos for about a year, and yeah, so I was curious. So I went over there and I took a look, and I was really struck with how clean your videos looked and how well
Thank
they
you.
were presented. I mean, it's very basic, but it was very well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's one of the goals that I aim for when I started the channel. I wanted to be something that you can actually you feel good. Looking at the video, it is you have a decent image. I mean, there's not much you can do with this face, but at least the imagery surrounding it looks good. And have because when you don't have any distractions like something that bothers you in the image or anything like that, then the information flows easier. Then whoever's watching the video can receive the information and in a better way. It'll be easier to understand.
Now, folks, remember if you've got questions, just put question in front of it so we can pick them out easily. Also, we are streaming to Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, both on Facebook and on YouTube. In the description, you can find all the socials as well as the YouTube channel for Jose. Check his stuff out; it's really good. Matter of fact, he's got about, I want to say, 20 videos.
Yeah, something around that. Yeah,
Yeah, so you can shotgun them all real quick and stay up to date.
good. That's a good thing to do. I
It looks
appreciate.
like you release about twice a month.
Yeah, that's the rate. I initially my goal was to release like a weekly video, but one of the things I right from the start realized is that I the suggested mode of operating a channel is to release as much as you can, as many videos as you can. But I am a firm believer on not releasing fluff, like not having stuff that is not really helpful, not just posting for the sake of posting. So uh, I've realized that like a twice per month rate works well. Sometimes I have like a drought in ideas of what to talk about, and sometimes I have a rush of ideas that come in, and I have to write them down so I don't forget. And the twice a month, publishing rate allows me to balance things out. Also between the channel and my family and my job and everything, and so it works pretty well. And in talking about content and to emphasize that, I actually have a video which after I posted it, and it served like a lesson as a lesson to me. I kind of regretted it afterwards because I don't, the purpose of the channel is to be useful, not only right now, but also in the future, and to basically provide help, period. That's the whole purpose of this, to help people run their games or play their games. And I posted this video about where I go into this philosophical debate about computer RPG games, if they're not real RPG games, da 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 da. And I posted that, and then a couple of weeks later, I was like, that was kind of lame. I shouldn't have done that. That's not useful at all. So, it's a learning process. This whole YouTube thing is a learning process. But so far, the reception has been pretty good, which I really appreciate.
So some videos their purpose is going to be entertainment over over education, and a video like that is more entertainment because
Mhm.
people like to discuss, and they also they also like to debate different things as well. So there was a question in the chat, but you pretty much answered it. So they wanted to know the focus of the channel, and you actually don't play D&D. You play a different game.
Well, that's a good point you bring. I started with basic fantasy, so I'm gonna go back a little bit here. And I played RPG games throughout all my life, basically since high school. But then there was a pretty long time span where I stopped playing because I couldn't find players, and life got busy, a bunch of things, so kind of just dropped it. Always kept my books and stuff, but dropped it. So what got me started into playing again was watching, or two things actually. This is like the Spanish Inquisition. There's two things. One was Matt Colville's running the game videos, and that kind of lit the spark. And then Critical Role, which I kind of discovered more or less at the same time, and that set the fire. That lit up the whole forest fire of for me. And but I was, kind of like, I don't want to make an investment. I was kind of like debating the whole thing. And I found Basic Fantasy, which was created by Chris Gunnerman. And Basic Fantasy is it's an OSR system, uses a D20 rule system. And it's in its simplest form, it's basic D&D, but with a reverse armor class, which I love. I hate the whole, reverse armor class system, the whole system. Yeah. To hit armor class 0, ugh. Yeah, none of that. And you can get the book for like $5 at Amazon, the whole rule set for $5. So I just bought it, and I got started with that. And it's a very good system. It runs really fast, quick, smooth. You got the 4 classes, 4 races. It's like the name says, basic. But and in this time, we actually, I'm gonna go back a little bit more. When we started playing, which I started playing with a bunch of nerdy coworkers. I'm fortunate to have nerdy coworkers. That's a good thing to have. We started playing D&D. Actually, the first game we played was D&D, and one of my friends was a dungeon master. I was a player, so we started with 5th edition, and then when I was dungeon master, I was playing Basic Fantasy. But in the middle of the campaign, they wanted more options. Like, there was a point where the players were kind of like, we want to have more versatile things going on with the characters, and have more options on what to, spells and things and all that. And I was also very curious about running 5th edition. So we made a switch, and now we're running 5th edition in our main campaign. I have a home campaign that I play with my kids. My kids are, my son is 20 and my daughter is 14. And we haven't played that in a long time, but they also wanted to switch to D&D. So I switched, but we haven't played that yet. So, but yeah, I made the switch to D&D. So far, I like it. So far, I think 5th edition is pretty fantastic. They have a nearly perfect balance of crunchiness and storytelling part, which is the part that I really love. Storytelling part of it. It really flows, and the speed difference when running the game is not that big, to be honest.
So, Brian Smith has a specific question. Does Basic Fantasy flip-flop? And I'm not sure what you mean by flip-flop. If you're talking about the armor class, where like it's always good to roll high.
That's flip-flop?
Yeah. So from basic D, from old D&D where it used to be.
Yeah, old D&D. You have actually Gunnerman also has a system called Iron Falcon, which uses the old reverse system, and it's a simple math to convert from one to the other. But when you're running the game and you just want like a number to it's way easier to just look at armor class. What's your armor class? Oh, 14. Okay, that's the number you're gonna be hitting against. You don't have to be, a 14. Let me look at this table here. Oh, that would be I don't know, whatever, 9 to hit. Probably my math is wrong. But yeah, it it just makes the game not too big on the technique. I'm the kind of I focus a lot more on the story part of things. Of course, the mechanics have to be there, but I really like things that help the game flow as quickly as possible and as smooth as possible. And funny enough, one of the things that made me also switch to 5th edition was the skill checks, because I think they help tweak the characters. Every character has like different perception inside, whatever. and also you can make very precise instead of just thinking of a difficulty and like, yeah, that should roll against, probably intelligence, maybe wisdom. No, you're totally clear on what to roll against, and it actually makes the game run faster.
What game system did you start with? Because I get the impression that you're kind of like coming back to the hobby after being out for a while.
Yes, exactly. I started with AD&D. So this is in 1985 in high school, and we were on lunch break, and I sat. We were outside in the school patio outside, and see these guys. They're sitting there, and I listened to them. I knew a couple of them, and they were I start hearing them like narrating a story and say, "Oh, I'm doing this. Okay, so I'm gonna attack with my sword and whatever, blah blah." And I think, what the heck is going on here? And rolling dice and whatever. So I ask, and we were playing Dungeons and Dragons. I said, "Oh man, that sounds really cool." And I stayed there for the whole section just listening to them. Then I asked the dungeon master, "Hey, dude, can I play?" He's like, "Sure." So I created a monk, which most people say I started with the wrong foot with Dungeons and Dragons, because monks were pretty weak sauce. They were pretty much lame. But I started with a monk, and so I started with AD&D actually, and then it sort of went back later. I got the basic books, so I switched to D&D. But then at that time, also Marvel superheroes came into the market. I still have the original books, so. We played Marvel superheroes. We played some Star Frontiers. I even had, I don't know, that book got lost a long time ago. I even had Gangbusters. We had some Gamma World also. I still have the Gamma World books. But the ones we played the most was AD&D and Marvel superheroes. So we basically in school, we were like in different days, we would run different games. It was actually pretty cool.
That's very similar to my early days. We used to play like 1 or 2 sessions of everything, mostly like AD&D, but like someone would pick up a new game and be like, "Oh, let's try that." Yeah. And whether it was Conan or Gangbusters or Twilight 2000 or Boot Hill or whatever it was back in the day, which is really cool. So did you start playing when you came here to the States or in Puerto Rico?
In Puerto Rico, yeah. I started playing. I was in high school, and I played it was many years where I was actively playing. And then after that, I started playing BattleTech. And then when I started playing BattleTech, I bought Mech Warrior. So I was, we were running Mech Warrior in conjunction with BattleTech, which was really cool. The Mech Warrior system was kind of bad, but it allowed us to, kind of role play BattleTech. So that went through many years. I actually went ahead and designed a couple of systems. One of them was horribly, horribly complicated. It was like, oh my God, it scaled so horribly. It was pretty bad. And then I went the other direction and designed a really simple system where you have only 2 stats. And we also played some of that. But by the time I moved to the United States, I had already kind of like I wasn't playing. My friends, they all went in different directions. There was, some things got, more complicated in life. It was hard to find time to play. And so when I moved here, I brought all my stuff, my books and things, but, still didn't have anybody to play with. And then I always tried to kind of, I've always been kind of, I won't say afraid, but this whole thing of arriving to a place and playing with people I don't know. I am naturally shy, so I don't know if that plays into it. Also, I don't know, what people are going to be finding if somebody's going to be a jerk or whatever. So there's always this kind of fear with this. So I never was courageous enough to go to a local game store and just sit down and say, "Hey guys, I want to play." So it took a long time until finally, together with my nerdy coworkers, we got into playing. Actually deciding, okay, let's do this. Let's play. Let's start a campaign, start playing, and get serious about it. And I think all that pent up desire to play and to do something, it's like, whoosh, just and now it was like a deluge. And then it was like yeah, I got really involved in everything. I started to get really into, you know, basic fantasy and then D&D, and the idea for the channel came up because I had all these ideas from, you know, from what I used to play, and I thought I had something useful to offer to people. And so, you know, it's not like I'm an authority, but I know some stuff.
So it definitely sounds like a lot of the stuff you're talking about I can definitely empathize with. And we might have a little bit of freeze going on.
And I thought it could be helpful to other players. And am I freezing?
You did freeze, but now you're back. So
all right.
The interwebs, it happens. Yeah, like, you know, for the longest time, I never talk about gaming, and I was a closet gamer pretty much, and I would never want my coworkers to know what I was doing on the weekends and stuff like that. I had my gaming group and we did the thing, and my wife knew what I did, and she would tell other people. I'm like, why tell them that? So.
No, I've been fortunate to have like my friends are a bunch of nerds, and they, I mean, not only with D&D, computer games, consoles, all sorts of games. They play Magic. They want me to play Magic for some reason. They're really into this. So I'm fortunate to have people, with me that we sometimes start these conversations in the office that we're in the break room. We start talking about, the last game we played or whatever. And, the other people kind of walk around kind of like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
They all get all weirded out. We're like, yeah, it's fine. It's about games, blah, blah, blah. Okay. They understand us.
So your work group, were they role players already, or, were they new?
Somewhere. To be specific, if you want to, I think one of them was really into role-playing game, which that was the guy that was the dungeon master when we got back to playing. The others, there was a couple that didn't know anything about RPGs. They knew about RPGs, but they never played.
Yeah.
So we exposed them to this. However, so right now in my campaign, I have two of my coworkers. The fiance, my coworker's fiance, my other coworker's girlfriend, they also play. That guy's girlfriend runs games, so she knows about RPGs. So we invited her into the game. She was like, "Sure, let's do this." And my son is also part of the campaign. But these guys, it was very cool to see, for example, this friend of mine who, this coworker who hadn't played tabletop RPGs, to see him discover the freedom of an RPG game, where from both sides, from his side, like, well, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I actually try this? Yeah, you can. Yeah, sure. I mean, dice will probably determine if you are successful or not, but you can try. And also from the DM side, and there's I remember they were fighting. There was in one session they were fighting this elf wizard, and they had fought with her, and she was down, and she was kind of like lying on the floor, kind of not unconscious, but kind of wounded. And they got into an argument between each other, and some people arrived, and they were kind of, and at that point in time, I had the elf wizard basically just stand up, run, and jump out a window, because they were in a room. And then they eventually got her and all that. But after the game, this guy, he asked me like, "Well, wait a minute, how can that be possible? We have wounded her, and she was on the floor. She was lying." He's like, "I'm gonna be as tricky as you guys are. This is not a game where you have a bar, like do 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 do, and then you run out of hit points or whatever, and then you're disabled forever. Your enemies are going to be as sneaky as you are, and they're going to trick you if they can." And that opened his mind to the possibilities that you have in an RPG game from both sides, and realizing that just made him a much better player. And he's actually become a pretty darn good player.
That that is always really cool to see is when the veil gets lifted from someone, they're like, and they realize there aren't any, their only limits are their imagination and the fake physics of the world,
Exactly. Yeah, it's for them, because again, most people, especially the people that are coming back, this is like the second golden age of tabletop RPGs. I mean, if you remember the 90s and early 2000s, it was pretty bad. At least from my perspective, it wasn't as popular. There wasn't this push of people getting into D&D and similar games. So all these people, I mean, he's much younger than me. He's 30, yeah, around 30. So he comes from many people like him come from a video game background, and even in really good RPG video games like Immersion, the enemies are not really that devious and sneaky, and you have also a bunch of things that you can do, and you cannot go further. You cannot really be creative. So they think that tabletop RPGs are similar to that. That basically, I'm gonna I can only attack, run, hide, and that's it. No, you can do anything that you can do in real life, as long as you can perform it under your existing skills and abilities and the physics of the world.
Yeah, I totally get that, but thankfully, because of it's weird, right? Because of D&D, we kind of have video games that have gone down that road. But now, like, we're getting players that are coming from video games that want to play D&D because their exposure to RPGs and maybe fantasy games, has made them curious about tabletop games. And
exactly, that's true.
Yeah, so it's very cyclic, and that was like one of the problems with 4th edition. I think I don't really see it as a problem, but it was a problem that a lot of people have with 4th edition, was the fact that they were acknowledging that and said, well, what if we start, since people are already doing this thing that they took from RPGs, what if we take it back and kind of recycle it back into the game? Wouldn't it be useful?
Exactly. Yeah, I never got into 4th edition. I always found it too game-like, kind of like too I don't know. It's hard to describe. And I remember, I think it was a video I saw where it talks about how there was supposed to be like a web companion to 4th edition, and that never happened.
Yes.
And that was the reason why 4th edition was so, kind of like game-like, in the sense of something like a board game, or kind of like a, Warcraft kind of thing. So I didn't find the appeal, because I personally find the attraction of RPGs in the story part of RPGs, the storytelling, the creating this world, this adventure for your players, that that's the immersive part of it all. And for me, some people like the crunchiness and the numbers and the min-max and all that. And that's not really my thing. I mean, but everybody enjoys whatever they want, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was the perception, but like my opinion has always been, as far as when it comes to role playing, like you can always role play any system. That's not really relevant to the mechanics themselves a lot of times. But I guess so. We played 4E for about a year and a half, and to me, like, a lot of the abilities and stuff just seemed kind of very sameish. But at the same time, there was a lot of cool things that they introduced, and I feel like a lot of that stuff was inspired by video games, and like the roles, like they really focused on the roles in 4E, and I find like a lot of tabletop gamers took issue with that. But like I was kind of like, well, the roles have already been in the game. Like we've always used them, even back in 1st edition when we were like designing our characters and putting together the party, and then you take when you take inspiration from something like D&D and turn it into a video game, and coders, well, what are they going to do? They're going to quantify everything, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
And then once they quantified the thing that we were already quantifying beforehand, for some reason, people just didn't like that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's like they wanted those kind of things to be left to them as players to sort of define in the background, like you know. I think some people what they want, and I think is one of the things that fifth edition does very well, is that you have enough rules to define your characters and but you still feel that you have freedom of tweaking that and doing with that whatever you want. Of course, it also relies on how you. It's like you said, the mechanics and the role playing. I'll give you an example from a current campaign. We have this character. Listen, I laugh because it's a funny character. But this character is a human dwarf. So he's a short human. So he thinks he's a dwarf. Basically, he is like a dwarf weeaboo. And this is one of the player characters. This is not an NPC. And when we converted from basic fantasy to 5th edition, the way the character was played by the player, basically she played this guy like it was angry all the time, kind of like, oh, he go crazy, gonna start bashing people like that. So we turned him into a barbarian. So technically he's a barbarian, but he's not a barbarian in the sense that comes from the tribes in the forests or the mountains or whatever. No, he's a city guy, but he acts like a barbarian. So he's just a short guy with anger issues. That's all he is. So you can take something that's been pretty fine and kind of just like tweak it and mold it the way it works for your game. And just like you said, there are some mechanics that people might feel, oh, you're putting me in these little boxes and I don't want that. But you can also tweak those boxes and kind of like, I know I'm sounding kind of contradictory to what I said about 4th edition, but you can take those things that they give you to these little boxes to put your character and your stuff in and tweak them to fit your view of the character or the world that you're working with.
So, we do that a lot. Like we reskin things a lot. Actually, Anthony is one of my players in my games, and he's in the chat. And when we first started our 5th edition campaign, when it first came out, him and his fiance wife now wanted to play goblins. I'm like, okay, we just at the time there weren't goblins in the game, so we just made some small tweaks to halflings and painted them green. File off the serial numbers.
That's funny, and it worked out right. It worked out pretty well, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times it just depends on what it is that the player is actually trying to get out of doing the thing that isn't in the game, right? If they just have a fun idea they want to explore, then usually you can make it work. Between the DM and the player talking. If they're trying to get some advantage or benefit, that's a whole different situation. But for the most part, like we reskin things all the time. We don't really look at the classes as occupations a lot of times. Sometimes we do, and sometimes we go, nope, this is just a suite of abilities that are going to help form the greater part of whatever that thing is.
Exactly, and all the class features are just things that character has learned throughout his or her life, or he was in a situation, I don't know, maybe like if it's a fighter, maybe that fighter was in the military that guy was in the military at some point, it was part of the guard or something like that, and now it's retired, and now that guy is, I don't know, it's a baker or he's whatever, or it's politician or whatever. But so the profession of that character doesn't necessarily has to match that character's abilities. Yeah, I totally get what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and also too, like, I guess like in any edition, I feel like it's easier in the earlier editions and now the later editions, but in any edition, you could always do things that you wanted to do, but sometimes the rules kind of got in the way a little bit and felt prohibitive. But I think only because, because of the people playing the game more so than the games themselves. right? Like, we had a session where, in the same session, our Dragonborn fighter wanted to pick up a giant table and throw it at the enemies. There's no rules for that, right?
Yeah.
In fifth edition, it's just a improvised weapon. So I'm like, sure, make a strength check, throw the table, and like, okay, it's a big table. You can hit like 3 or 4 guys, and they're gonna have to make a saving throw, or they're gonna fall. They'll fall prone. And the other thing was the goblins were entertainers, and they were performing at the time, and they were throwing. They were throwing torches. I think they were throwing torches and bottles of liquor back and forth between the two of them. Yeah, because
that sounds dangerous.
Yeah. But they needed to drink while they work. It's part of their shtick. So they're like, can we? And then the fight breaks out. So they're like, can we throw these? Can we throw the liquor and the torches at the enemies? So I'm like, sure, why not?
Yeah, that's one of the things when being a dungeon master. When I see questions on Twitter, and all the time like, oh, yeah, I'm starting, running a game. What do I do? What do you recommend? And there's a bunch of things we can recommend, but in the end, I think probably one of the most important, or if not the most important, is being able to improvise, but improvise based on the rules. Not something that breaks the system, so to speak, and the mechanisms are there. Most RPG systems provide some sort of, way for you to figure out, well, maybe we could do a so and so check. We could try this, or But we have to be ready as dungeon master and game masters to not. One of the worst things you can say to a player is like, no, you can't do that. No, you can, because then we break what we were talking about before. We break this whole thing of this freedom for players to do whatever they want to do, and so you got to be available for them to, when they say, well, can we throw these bottles and these torches? Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, so do whatever, dexterity check, or it's like a missile attack, or the table that you mentioned, or like I really. One good thing is my very first D&D games, I had a very good dungeon master that would allow for this kind of, shenanigans. And I had a barbarian in our second campaign. I had a barbarian, 7-foot tall guy, really strong. They had like 81% strength. It was something really crazy. And there was a fight in a tavern that actually I started, and when things got really crazy, and I'm looking around, and the bartender is there, and I threw the bartender some guys that were. So basically, I reached over the bar, grabbed the bartender, lifted him, and just tossed the poor guy at some other people that wanted to hit me. And the dungeon master allowed that. It's like, yeah, okay. He allowed me to roll for it, and I was successful, and I hit them, And that opened my mind, having somebody that wouldn't kill my imagination and just say, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. It was eye-opening in what a tabletop RPG can provide. And I learned from that. And ever since I've been running games, I always let my players, I actually encourage them. Like I don't have a defined system for this, but I will actually give advantage. I just judge it. I use my judgment. Like, if you want to do something really, really freaking cool, and it's not like a game breaking thing, and it's gonna be epic if you get to do it, I'm gonna let you do it. I'm gonna let you try it. Sometimes it might be with advantage, even, but I'll let you try.
And as a DM too, like, sometimes you're just trying to figure out how to interpret what they want to do within the rules. Like, I had a player that's like, I want to like jump through this window and kick them in the chest, and it sounds cool, but like mechanically it's ineffectual. So I'm like, okay, we can do that. And I was like, well, roll an opposed strength check instead of making a kick attack. I'm like, well, we do the kick, right? The drop kick per se. And, if you beat them, then you knock them prone, and now you can take your next attack with advantage. And, and they're down, and you have an advantage over them. And trying to figure figure that kind of stuff out is like the trick of being a GM. Or you get players that do try and do things that are really they're thematic, but they're so far against what the game actually does. Like, I want to try and cut its jugular, like, and it's like, well, the game doesn't support that, right?
Yeah, it's like that's pretty hardcore there.
yeah, and you know, and it's okay, and that's like one of the failings. But on the plus side, no one can go, I want to cut your jugular, and you lose your character in one attack. December 7M2. My first experience with D&D was a 4E game, and it wasn't in the rules. My DM would say, no, just can't do that. Now that I DM, I vow to never say no to creative thinking again. And you know, I think that is a symptom of really, I actually blame like 3rd edition for that, right? To a certain extent, because the systems that have like all the rules spelled out, I think they kind of like take away some of the creativity from a GM, and also it's very conducive to rules lawyering when you can make a ruling as a DM and then have a player grab a book, but it says here on page 52, you know, for like every little rule, you know, at a certain point, that kind of, I think that like kills the creativity.
I think I agree. I totally agree, and that's actually one of the things that I found really nice about basic fantasy. Is that the rules are really light. Like it's very, you got the basic mechanics for combat and a couple of, you know, things and spells, and that's it. You run with the rest. So I found myself when running the game doing a lot of you know, basically making up stuff on the fly, like okay, this should be probably a strength check, this or use this skill or this ability that you have. But the players never felt that they were being told, you know, the only times when I tell a player, because there's times you have to basically tell them you can't do that, is because you don't have that skill, like at all, or it's technically impossible. You know, you cannot have a fighter casting a spell. You don't have spells. You can't do that. I mean, that's a very basic example. I haven't seen that in my game. But there are things that are simply that's out of that you can't just do that.
It breaks the physics of the world. Like, even though it's a fantasy world, there's still like some rules that are there that are grounded. Like, now, if it was, say, a spell scroll and the fighter got a hold of it somehow and had a way to read it because maybe he had magical glasses on, then you know what, maybe I might allow something. You know, let's roll some dice and see what happens. And
exactly.
One of those things might be you blowing yourself up, but there's certain things like I know Ted used the example in one of our videos of someone, you know, falling and trying to flap their arms to fly. Well, obviously you can flap your arms as hard as you want. You're still going to fall.
It's going to be,
you're just going to look silly while you do it.
Yeah, you're going to look really stupid while falling, and people will probably remember you. Somebody's looking at you like, oh, look at that guy. Okay. There you go. He tried to fly. Yeah, no, there are some things that are simply impossible, but I think players, there are some players I know that don't, for some reason, don't learn this. Like they keep trying to do these impossible things. They but I would say most of the players, the vast majority, they get it. There's a point where they're like, okay, yeah, I can do whatever I can while it matches the world's physics and my capabilities. And in fact, sometimes, they use the limitations of their skills or spells to actually do some, spark that originality and really think of cool things to do. Like it gets, for example, I had this player, actually the guy that I told you that I had never played RPGs before. And when we were in basic fantasy, he had this cantrip that he could hold a rope and basically create, tie it or untie it. It was knot, and he would use that like in a fight. He actually had the idea of taking the rope, throwing it at the enemy, and then when the rope hit the enemy's leg, have it tie tie itself around the enemy's ankle. And he rolled for that, and he succeeded, and that was crucial in the whole thing. So he, even though, because initially he was kind of like, I'm a magic user, I'm kind of weak. It's like, I'm like, you're gonna get more powerful, and also, think creatively. He started doing so, and now he comes up with the craziest ideas. You're like, that's actually pretty darn good idea. So this whole thing of you can allow, and sometimes even tweak, like I think on purpose, the things like spell rules, spell capabilities, things like that. I think using as an example D&D, I think the writers leave details out on purpose. Like they tell you this spell does this, has this effect, you have to save against this, da 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 da. Okay, fine. But they don't give you a list of what it can and cannot do. And I think that's a good thing, because that allows the players to find original ways to use existing spells, get really creative, and it makes the game a lot more fun.
I've seen that happen in games with Ray of Frost, where people want to use it to make like slippery patches and stuff like that instead of as an attack. Or, oh, there's fire. Can I use that to put out some of the fire?
Yeah, I mean, and you can roll against that. You can think, okay, considering the situation, and okay, you might allow that, and it works. It makes them, especially at lower levels, when magic users and can be kind of weak sauce. It makes them feel more useful. It makes them feel like I'm contributing something to this group of adventurers. I'm not just sitting here and casting magic missile and then just standing in the corner and waiting for the whole thing to fizzle out.
So Purpura Draco, I think he's just messing with me, but so he's got a question, and I think this is definitely pointed at me. Breaking stealth to ask how far out of the box would you go, Dave? E.g., society that sees death completely differently, allowing lawful good necromancers. So that's definitely a societal thing, and it also depends on how you view necromancy in your world. And that's what I've said over and over again. In my world, you're entrapping the soul. It is evil, and necromancers are evil, and if they animate dead. Now, if we were to do a different world, a different take, like the Spore Droid is a great example. I don't see them as animating dead the way a necromancer does. They are actually, creating this virus in the body that gives it the semblance of life, and they're not like they're not reanimating it with necromantic powers. Is that therefore I don't see that the same way as I do someone who is pulling back the veil of death to take a piece of spirit or soul and shove it back into the body to give it a semblance of life. Now, in that same campaign, like, they might see themselves as lawful good because of what they do. They don't consider it evil, but other societies around them might still view it as evil. And if they ever got confronted with the knowledge that they are actually enslaving spirits to do this, and then again they would have to reevaluate their morals. But again, like with undead, especially the default undead of D&D, is if left to their own devices, they try to kill the living. Therefore they can't be good.
Yeah, alignment is a thing that is so much related to the culture of the area where the character lives, comes from, or the organization that character belongs to. And like for example, this is something I have in my campaign. If you have a cleric who is, in general term, is lawful good, but when she sees a goblin, she wants to kill the goblin or a hobgoblin. Why? Because in her view of the world, getting rid of goblinoids is a good thing. So she acts very good with everybody. She is selfless. But when she sees a goblinoid, she will definitely, she thinks that they are evil, pure evil, and she must get rid of them. And for another character, that might be like, why are you killing this guy? I mean, he's doing nothing to us. Well, he's a goblin, and my God tells me that I have to kill this creature. So, in her point of view, she's being lawful good because she's getting the world rid of what she's been taught are evil creatures. For other character, this is different. This is like, well, no, I mean, you're just being abusive with this poor guy. Just let him go. So alignment is something that, again, is related to the society and the world you run in. You can possibly have a world where they think that creating undead, necromancy, and stuff like that is a good thing because, yeah, you bring this person back to life, where not exactly the way it was originally working, but you sort of, you could twist that to be good in that world, in that context. But for another world, another culture, it would be totally evil.
A good example would be Ebron, where they had the Undying Court, which were elves, and I believe they were raised by positive energy, though, because 3rd edition is very much positive and negative energy. If you infuse something with negative energy to bring it back to unlife, really, that would be like an evil act. If you, like the Undying Court, though, they used positive energy, so it was it wasn't necessarily an evil act, and they also had societal agreements about how to use that. Where Karnoth, on the other hand, they were animating the dead to bring them back as soldiers. So, which is another thing that's completely different. And you could kind of say, well, maybe it's different for that side of society. But then you realize it's secretly ruled by a vampire. So maybe not.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, a lot of that stuff is how you set up your cosmology in your game, and and kind of like the rules of your campaign world is going to determine that stuff.
Exactly. It's very much related to your world, how you're running the game. In fact, in personally in my games, I don't put a lot of emphasis on alignment as a guideline for the players. I kind of go the other way around and let them play the character the way they want to, and eventually that will determine kind of the alignment they're leaning into. Because if they think they have to be good, I have to be good. I have to be, I cannot do this evil thing. I cannot be chaotic because I'm lawful. I cannot break this law. I just let them flow naturally based on their backstory and how they want to run the character, and then we sort of determine the alignment from that.
The game we're playing now, our collab game, Saver Dice, Cody's the dungeon master, and he just, from Taking 20, and he just threw alignment out. He's just like, just play your characters. And I think a lot of people do that as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a holdover, and they're like, there's certain things in Dungeons & Dragons that Wizards of the Coast, or at least the designers, are like, we should just get rid of this. But you know what? When we pushed too hard in 5th edition, there was too much blowback. So I think they really tried to figure out what the sacred cows were and to leave them where they were, so they didn't have to deal with that. Because when they made vast changes, it did not work for them very well.
Yeah.
So I always view alignment as kind of like a dimmer switch, right? It's always modulating up and down. Like, you have your core tenets and beliefs, but at the end of the day, like, we're all human, I guess you could say, quote unquote, and therefore fallible. So even if you're lawful good, you can have dark moments. But even if you're chaotic evil, you could also have good moments. So it's not like, some people like just view it as almost like a caricature of a morality compass, and everything's in absolutes, instead of like, this is who you kind of are generally at your core. But you know what? You're fallible. You're susceptible to feelings and emotions, and you may feel lawful good to certain people, but like, that character with the goblinoids, like, towards them, that character is probably completely maybe chaotic evil in regards, because it's a prejudice or a bias that the character has.
Exactly. Alignment is a very fluid thing. You cannot just, in case. It will really block players if you enforce it really hard. It will block players from actually role playing their characters to the full extent.
So we have another question from Des7M2. Would you be willing to give special bonuses to players that describe their illusion spells well? To me, it's not like description of the illusion, but like the intent and what they're trying to do with it. and the execution. And the problem with illusion is it requires a GM to give you buy-in as a player and be on board. Like if you have an adversarial GM, you're being an illusionist is basically worthless. But if you have a GM that wants to have fun and kind of like build stories with their players and buys into what they're trying to do, then illusion is one of the most powerful magics.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And definitely, yeah, illusionist is something that there are classes and abilities that require good role playing and cooperation between, like you mentioned, the dungeon master and the player. I mean, the classic example is the bard. Bard can be pretty awful in a game or can be pretty amazing, and it just depends on how the player runs the character and how the game master or dungeon master allows that player creativity to flow in the game and let him do things, and then maybe give him some advantage, some bonus. So I let him get away with doing things, providing certain type of inspiration. It's one of those skills and classes that require that cooperation between both. If you have somebody that's also about like very strict and very by the numbers and whatnot, that's not going to work that well.
Yeah, like I guess a good example too. Like if what you're asking is how do I arbitrate that? Like for an example, if there's a hole and a player creates the illusion above it that it isn't, like even just using the cantrip minor illusion, and a monster goes to step on it, I am not going to give the monster a saving throw versus knowing the illusion's there or not, especially if they're moving fast or something. And they would have no reason to believe that part of the ground is any different than any other part.
Exactly, that particular part is
they automatically fall through, and then I might give them a saving throw to catch themselves. But against the illusion itself, no, there's no reason for it. As long as my players are using illusions that make sense to where they are, and it seems plausible to the physics of the world, then I would absolutely just say this thing kind of happens. Now, if it was a different kind of illusion, or if say they're trying to use minor illusion to cast fire, right? Now that becomes problematic because fire has more elements to it. You can see fire, you can feel fire, you can smell fire, you can even hear fire at times.
Exactly.
So then I might be like, okay, this one isn't as plausible, but maybe they're distracted and they won't notice initially. So, maybe then give them a saving throw. But I tend to try and err on the side of the players for the most part. To me, that seems like it's going to be the most fun. Now, if they do things that are silly, stupid, or don't make sense, then I have no problem with punishing them with great relish and rancor.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you make them pay. I remember in my high school game, I used to remember this. We had this player. He was playing a Paladin, and we were fighting this. I didn't even remember what monster we were fighting. And he says, "Well, I pull out my sword and I'll throw it at the monster." And then the dungeon master started describing: "You pull out your sword, it shines in the daylight, it reflects the sun, and you put your arm back and you throw it at all your might, and it flips a couple of times in the air and falls 12 feet ahead of you." Clank, clanks to the ground. What you gonna do? Okay, I'll just go pick it up and fight the monster. Yeah, you're not gonna be throwing swords. I mean, come on.
I would have gave that a die roll. I would have definitely gave that a die roll. It would have required a good die roll for something cool to happen.
I mean, it was something like a bastard sword or something like that. It was. I mean, it was funny though. But yeah, I for the most part, I let players, players are the heroes of the story. I don't think as a game master or as a dungeon master, we should go against the players. We challenge them and we provide excitement in this world, but they are the heroes. That doesn't mean they have plot armor. They can die, but we are not, it's not us between them. We're together building this story. And this kind of thing, allowing them to be really creative and do whatever within context, do whatever you want to do, go for it, we'll figure it out. that's one of the best things we can do for our players, because it opens up the game and you get all these memorable D&D moments that we enjoyed that so much.
Oh, so Ask a Pathfinder is asking some questions about paladins. Touching back on alignments, paladins fall as a part of your campaign. Is this something you do? Follow up, what about paladins fall as a punishment? So that, that's kind of tricky in 5e, and that's one of the that's one of the things where you can see they've really tried to get away from alignment and they literally, it means nothing in the game. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with any of the spells anymore. It doesn't have anything to do with classes anymore. And, so a paladin can fall by going against their oaths. And it's really tricky because, like, a fighter never loses their abilities. A spellcaster a wizard isn't going to unlearn his spells. He could lose his spell book. But, but clerics and paladins, and I guess even druids to an extent as well, could in theory have their power stripped from them because it comes from another person. Well, I feel like the same thing with warlock as well.
Yeah, warlock could also be like that.
So it's kind of depends on what kind of game you're playing, what kind of agreement you have with your players, and if you're going to be punitive about that kind of stuff during play and it's stuff that can come up, then I feel like that should be a discussion you have before the game starts, before the campaign starts, so they know that's a possibility. Or in your world, the gods might be like, all right, you're into the thing now, I don't even pay attention anymore. Like Eberron was very like that. Like, the gods were very hands off. And, as long as, like, a priest higher than you kind of rose you up to the ranks and now you're a cleric, not Eberron specifically, but as an example of how it might work in your world, that might be good enough. Where even in, like, the real world, maybe it's more about politics than it is about faith and religion. So it might not matter. It just depends on how you shape your world and how everyone interacts. In old school D&D, where, OSR games, yes, absolutely. I feel like you would be stripped of your powers and your abilities.
Yeah. But I think you also need to put it's a good opportunity to put a good story in the whole thing. Like, not just like, well, you lost your powers, you did this, it goes against your deity, whatever, boom, you're screwed. No. I think they should be. I mean, I haven't played a Paladin yet. I haven't a game master Paladin yet, but I think I would take that opportunity to actually have something epic happen to that character, like a quest, basically, like reivindicate yourself. Like, you have to get yourself back into a good standing position with your deity. So you have to do this or that. So I don't know about stripping powers. I don't know. That would be a hard thing for me to judge. It would depend.
It's situational.
Yeah, definitely situational. I totally agree.
Yeah, so we were coming up on the hour mark, and I know some of you guys are going to be waiting around for the Spelljammer game that's going to be happening next. So we're going to have to clear out so those guys can get in here and do their thing, which they're having a lot of fun. It's a ridiculous campaign. It's they're all a bunch of foodies in space, essentially, with D&D.
Foodies in space, okay.
I think they're trying. I think they've been contracted to build out a cookbook or something. It's crazy. But I want to thank you for coming on, Jose, and everyone, go check out his YouTube channel. Follow him on Twitter and Instagram, on the socials. He's got good content over there that I've been enjoying. So I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us today. And you know the drill, folks. Until next time, stay nerdy.
Thank you.